The North Carolina Tar Heels have had a lot of great point guards over the years, like Ty Lawson, Raymond Felton, Cota, and Kenny Smith. But the best point guard to rock the powder blue was Phil Ford, as he led them through the mid to late 70s, becoming the first freshman ever to start for Dean Smith. He was adept at driving through the lane and kicking out to teammates for open shots, or he could finish at the rim with an amazing 360 layup. He could also stop on a dime and hit the mid-range consistently. Dean Smith ran his four corners offense, which led Phil to usually be the one dribbling in the middle while the other four spread out, as this stalling strategy was extremely effective, frustrating their opponents and getting boring chants from the fans. Phil's legendary college career led him to being drafted second overall by the Kansas City Kings in 1978, where he formed a nice duo with fellow guard Otis Birdsong. He had a solid first few years in the NBA, even making the All-NBA second team and winning Rookie of the Year in his first season. But in 1981, he was having his best season yet, but a freak eye injury before the playoffs would derail his career, as he would never play up to this level again. After his premature retirement in 1985, he would overcome alcoholism to turn his life around, even becoming a successful assistant coach at his alma mater, winning a national championship before coaching at the NBA level for a few years. Although his pro career didn't go the way he expected, there's no denying how great Phil was at UNC. Welcome to Peasy Hoops, and let's get down to it. Phil was born on February 9th, 1956 in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. He had a great career at Rocky Mount High, finishing with the highest scoring average in North Carolina high school history, as he was also named a first-team parade All-American. Phil's college decision was influenced by Charlie Scott, who was the first black athlete to get a scholarship to North Carolina. As Phil in his own words said, "I wanted to be the next Charlie Scott." Phil joined a Tar Heel squad that already had a good collection of NBA talent, with Mitch Kupchak, Walter Davis, and John Kuster. Phil would be the first freshman ever to start for Dean Smith, and he would be a major contributor early on, as the Tar Heels would get big wins over number 3 Maryland and number 7 NC State on their way to a 17-7 finish going into the conference tournament. They beat Wake Forest by 1 point in overtime, Clemson by 5, and NC State by 1 in the championship, breaking the Wolfpack's 2-year ACC championship streak. Phil averaged 16.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 5 assists as he won the ACC tournament MVP. The Tar Heels faced New Mexico State in the first game of the Big Dance, as they would win in a blowout with Phil dropping 12 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals, but he committed 7 turnovers. UNC would lose to Syracuse by 2 in the next game, as Phil put up 24 points and 5 assists in the loss. They would win their third place game against Boston College in a blowout, as Phil dropped 19 points and 8 assists along with 7 turnovers. In 1975, the Tar Heels ran it back with the same squad, as Phil became one of the best players in the nation. UNC rattled off 2 6-game winning streaks in the first 14 games. After a 1-point loss to NC State, they won 12 straight going into the conference tourney to finish 24-2. Phil averaged a team-leading 18.5 points, 2 rebounds, a conference-leading 7 assists, and 2 steals, being named a consensus second-team All-American. They beat Clemson in the first game of the ACC tournament, as Phil would have his tooth knocked out, catch it while he was dribbling, then hand it to the trainer as he kept playing. However, they would lose to Virginia by 5 in the next game. They still earned an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament, facing Alabama in their stingy defense. North Carolina was held to 37% shooting as Phil only dropped 2 points in a 15-point loss. Dean Smith was the coach of Team USA as they went to the 1976 Olympics in Montreal, as the team featured 4 Tar Heels: Phil, Mitch, Walter, and Tom Lagarde. Phil would average 13 points and lead the entire Olympics with 8 assists a game, as Team USA captured the gold. Mitch left for the NBA after the season, but the Tar Heels were able to retool, winning 11 straight games to start the season. After losing 3 of their next 4, they would win 9 straight to finish the season at 22-4. Phil averaged 19 points, 2 rebounds, 6.5 assists, and 2 steals, being named a first-team All-American this year. UNC would beat NC State and Virginia to win another ACC title. Purdue was their first test in the tournament, but Phil would go off for 27 points and 3 assists on 56% shooting in a 3-point win. They would beat Notre Dame as Phil put up 29 points, 5 assists, and 2 steals. He had a bad game against Kentucky in the Elite 8 with only 2 points as he got into foul trouble early, but the Tar Heels would win by 7, securing a Final Four matchup against UNLV. This was a very close game as North Carolina escaped with a 1-point win. Phil had a nice all-around performance with 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 9 assists, but he committed 9 turnovers. The Tar Heels faced Marquette in the national championship game, but this wouldn't go well for them. They would trail by 12 at halftime, and the lead was too big to overcome as they would lose by 8. Phil had a poor showing with 6 points and 5 assists on 30% shooting. North Carolina lost a lot of offense in 1977 as Walter Davis, John Kuster, and Tom Lagarde all left for the NBA, leaving Phil as the top player as he would have the best season of his college career. The Tar Heels will start the season ranked number 1 as they won their first 4 games. but they were then upset by William and Mary before beating up on Rochester, New York by 58 points. Although they were good in conference play, they were looking pretty beatable as they barely won against Tulane and Mercer and even lost to Furman, but they would finish 23-6 heading into the ACC tournament, as Phil played like the best player in the nation this year, averaging 21 points, 2 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals, winning a laundry list of awards this year, including ACC Player of the Year and the Wooden Award. Their conference tournament run was short as they lost to Wake Forest by 5 in the first round, but they still received an at-large bid, facing San Francisco in their top 10 defense. The game was tied at halftime, but the Dons would pull away late, winning by 4. Phil's final college game was pretty rough, with 14 points, 3 assists, and 4 steals on 37% shooting. After establishing himself as possibly the best point guard in Tar Heel history, Phil was picked 2nd overall in the 1978 NBA draft by the Kansas City Kings, 1 pick behind Michael Thompson and 4 picks before Larry Bird. The Kings were a pretty solid squad, as their draft pick from last year, Otis Birdsong, was one of the best rookies last season. They had a nice scoring wing in Scott Wedman, along with a reliable front court with Sam Lacey and Bill Robinzine. Phil and Otis would quickly become one of the more intriguing young backcourts in the league this year. Phil's rookie season got up to an excellent start, averaging 15 points and 9.5 assists on 48% shooting to the first 20 games. His passing was one of the best parts of his game, as he dropped double-digit assists in 25 games, including a 26-point, 22 assists, and 5 steal game on February 21st against Milwaukee. Otis would break out in his sophomore year, averaging 22 points a game, as Scott contributed 18 points. Phil averaged 16 points, 2.5 rebounds, 8.5 assists, and 2 steals, as he would win the Rookie of the Year, make the All-NBA second team, and even finish 8th in MVP voting. Kansas City was above average on both sides of the ball, so they finished with a 48-34 record, facing Phoenix in the semifinals, who were led by Phil's former college teammate, Walter Davis. The Suns would win by 3 in Phil's playoff debut as he dropped 10 points, 7 assists, and 2 steals on 3 of 17 shooting. Kansas City would bounce back with a 20-point win in Game 2, but Phil had a quiet game with 8 points, 9 assists, and 2 steals on 36% shooting. The Kings would get blown out in the next 3 games to lose the series, as Phil struggled, shooting 28% over the last 3 games. The Kings drafted Reggie King out of Alabama in 1979, as he would split power forward duties with Robinzine. The Birdsong and Ford backcourt was still going strong, while Scott had one of the best seasons of his career. Phil was consistently providing elite passing as he had 26 games with double-digit assists. He was displaying his scoring as well, putting up back-to-back 30-point games in the middle of November, followed by a then career high of 35 a week later against the Suns. The Kings' offense had regressed this year, but they had a top 5 defense, finishing 47-35, facing the Suns again in the first round. Phil averaged 16 points, 2 rebounds, 7.5 assists, and 2 steals this year. He had a solid game 1 with 14 points and 7 assists, but the Suns would win by 3. He had one of the best playoff games of his career in Game 2, dropping 18 points, 13 assists, and 3 steals in a 10-point win. He continued his solid play in Game 3 with 20 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals, but Otis and Scott shot a combined 15 of 41 as the Suns won the game and took the series. Phil would play the best basketball of his career in 1980 as he continued with his elite passing, but his scoring would take the biggest jump as he dropped 7 30-point games, including a career-high 38 against Houston on January 23rd. Otis had turned into one of the league's best scorers, while Reggie King played well in his second season. But a game on February 22nd against the Warriors would change Phil's career forever. He was defending an outlet pass from World B. Free when he was accidentally poked in the eye, pushing it through its shell, resulting in a blowout orbital fracture, leading to him having double vision. Despite this, his career year saw him average 17.5 points, 2 rebounds, 9 assists, and 1.5 steals. Luckily, Kansas City finished 40-42 and were able to sneak into the playoffs, but without their starting point guard, they looked to be doomed. But the Kings were able to beat Portland and Phoenix, even as Birdsong would go down with a serious ankle injury. Kansas City made their first conference finals since 1964, facing the upstart Houston Rockets. Phil would actually return for the series, but he wasn't the same. Meanwhile, Otis only played in 3 games. Reggie King had the best playoff series of his career, averaging 22 points and 11 rebounds, but the Kings were easily beaten in 5 games. Despite making the conference finals the year before, Kansas City decided to rebuild, trading Otis to the Nets for Cliff Treetop Robinson. They also traded Sam to the Nets, while letting Scott walk in free agency. Although Phil was still starting, it was clear that his eye injury was affecting his play as he played his lowest minutes so far. He failed to crack 30 points in the game this year, while only recording double-digit assists in 9 games, with his best performance coming on November 6 against Houston when he dropped 24 points, 6 assists, and 6 steals. Cliff was playing at a career level through the first half of the season, averaging 20 points and 8.5 rebounds, but he would be traded to Cleveland at the deadline for sharpshooter Reggie Johnson. As you might expect with the amount of roster turnover they had, Kansas City was bad, finishing 30-52, missing the playoffs. Phil averaged 10 points, 1.5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists this year. Kansas City looked to add more scoring, so Phil would be traded to the Nets for Ray Williams, but he would only play 7 games for them before he was traded again to Milwaukee for Mickey Johnson and Fred Roberts. The Bucks were led by their young duo of Marcus Johnson and Sidney Moncrief, as Phil was slotted in as a starting point guard. Even though he was only 26 at this point, Phil would never return to being the player he was in Kansas City. He still provided some scoring and good passing though, as he had 2 games with double-digit assists. Despite the lack of production from Phil, the Bucks' elite defense carried them to a 51-31 record, as Moncrief became the first guard to win Defensive Player of the Year. Between the two teams this year, Phil averaged 7 points, 1.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. Phil would only play in the first 2 games of the playoffs, with only 5 minutes of action, as the Bucks swept the Celtics before losing to Philly in the second round. Phil was released by the Bucks in the offseason, but he would sign with the Houston Rockets, as they needed point guard depth after Calvin Murphy's retirement. They had the number 1 pick in the draft, and they selected the 7'4" unicorn Ralph Sampson from Virginia, but the Rockets really didn't have much else. Phil wasn't really a scorer at this stage in his career, but he still possessed some above-average playmaking, with 4 games with double-digit assists, including a glimpse of what he could have been without the injury on January 10th against the Spurs, when he dropped 10 points, 17 assists, and a career-high 7 rebounds. Ralph Sampson had an amazing rookie season, winning Rookie of the Year and becoming an All-Star, but even with his size, the Rockets were near the bottom of the league defensively, so he finished 29-53, missing the playoffs. Phil averaged 7 points, 2 rebounds, and 5 assists on the season. Houston would draft Hakeem Olajuwon with the first pick in 1984 to form a lethal frontcourt duo with Sampson. New additions John Lucas and Lionel Hollins would occupy most of the point guard minutes, leaving Phil as an afterthought. Phil would fail to crack 10 points or 10 assists this year, as it was clear he wasn't in Houston's plans. He would be waived on December 15th as he averaged 2 points, 1 rebound, and 2.5 assists. He wouldn't latch on to another team until 1986, when he signed with the Warriors, but he would never suit up for them, as he would retire at the age of 30. Phil wouldn't be away from the game for long, as he was hired as an assistant at North Carolina in 1988. The Tar Heels would make 5 Final Four appearances and win a national championship in 1993 during his tenure. He would leave in 2000, then becoming an assistant in the NBA for the Pistons, Knicks, and Bobcats. He did all of this while suffering from alcoholism, but he was able to get sober and remain that way to this day. Phil's number will be retired by the Tar Heels, as he continues to attend practices and games at the Dean Smith Center. Phil Ford was one of the first in a long line of great point guards in North Carolina, setting himself apart as the best in school history, possibly the best player to ever play in the ACC. He found success early on in the NBA with his great slashing and passing, as he would be an all-NBA level player as a rookie. He was steadily improving until a freak accident ruined his vision and severely altered his career. Who knows how good Phil could have been without the injury, but his college career alone sets him apart, as he was able to overcome some personal demons after his career in order to have some success in the coaching ranks. Thank you guys for all the support on this channel, man. I really appreciate you guys. You know, I've just been busy with schoolwork, man, so I'm sorry it's been a minute since I dropped a video. Thank you for all the support. I really appreciate you guys. You know, I saw a comment about Phil Ford like a month or so ago, so I'm like, let me make a video on him. Thank you. Have a great day. Please be safe. Stay on the grind. I'm out. Peace.